Hey everybody, it's Bust with not a Battles with Bust. There'll be no battles today, but we are doing 5 decks to try in the Heart of the Huntress standard format. And so the Heart of the Huntress will be released mere moments after this video hits the old YouTube. I want to talk about some of the decks that we plan on playing over the course of the next week. As the set comes out, we get to try out some of these new themes with Nidalee and Neeko and the Poro King. The big surprise coming in at the end of the spoilers, the Poro King coming right at you. And so, before we dive into the 5 decks that we're going to be presenting today, I did want to bring up the patch notes for a hot second. If you didn't catch the patch notes right away, you're too busy reading the spoilers as they came out. There are no balance changes in this. I was really hoping that we were going to enter this set. There might be a balance change to the likes of Seraphine falling to 3 health or whatever you're supposed to do to Samira to take her down a notch. I don't know. But there's no balance changes in this patch. There's also a big collection of things released into Path of Champions. We haven't played Path of Champions here for quite some time, but the new champions have all been added in here. Lots of exciting things happening there. But the biggest thing to announce, the most exciting thing coming out of this is going to be the Soul Fighter event, the new game coming out from Riot. It's going to be way too stressful for me to play. I'm not going to be playing any Soul Fighter. I'm just too old and don't have the manual dexterity or the heart to play games that require manual dexterity. So we'll be casually observing from the sidelines, but very exciting stuff having this come out. And there's the nice crossover event, not only with Soul Fighter, but also with TFT in terms of Legends of Runeterra. And so it's very exciting in terms of spreading the word and letting people know that this game exists. And so lots of fun stuff coming out of this, an event pass, new skins and stuff. We're going to be purchasing all kinds of that right from the start. Oh, so hyped to get the new Evelynn emotes. I think this was easily my most favorite one in recent times. So much stuff to have to scroll through, but the Heart and Soul Evelynn I do dig. And so before we dive in, a couple of more things. The one I really wanted to bring forth, and the one I'm really not sure about, is how people are really going to follow Standard and Eternal. And so with the past month, the Eternal format was probably twice as popular as Standard. I'm not exactly certain on that numbers, but it feels like it was about twice as popular, and I'm not certain if that was just because it was the new shiny thing, or if that was because all of the open events and the gauntlets were Eternal for that season. I'm not certain how much that all ties in together, and so I'll probably play just whatever people are playing. And so if, even though this is a Standard season, people want to see more Eternal, we might squeeze in some more Eternal. But as it stands, I'm planning on playing the formats as they rotate around, and we're also going to be talking about all of the decks today in terms of Standard. The last thing I wanted to call out before we got that little nugget out of the way, one of the bug fixes was mysterious portals will no longer summon followers with plunder or play effects. This is probably directly attributed to the PNZ augmented elusive, whatever he was called, that drew the card. They probably couldn't fix it, so they just banned it. And so easy enough, but I think that is a relevant one to call out. As there is, new mysterious portal cards in the set, Nora is still quite popular. But with the patch notes out of the way, we can dive into the decks, and the first one is one that I'm quite interested in. This is going to be Nidalee Evelynn, and so not only are both of these champions featured in the Soul Fighter event, you can get a new skin for both Nidalee and Evelynn. I think they have a lot of really interesting synergies that could come forth with really helping each other out. And so Nidalee wants to see you summon the allies or transform the allies. You don't have to load your deck full of transform stuff for this to work. You can just come out and play all of the Husk units. All of the Husk units generate a double summon, whether or not that's Saltor or Steam or whoever. All of the Husk units give you a 2 summon, so they really give you that opportunity to power up and level up through your Nidalee. So that's all well and good. The Siren Song, also quite powerful in terms of boosting all of the husks, getting a summon out of it, and then giving all of your units bonuses in the future. And so nice little sets of synergies between the husk package along with Nidalee. And then we start to see the transform package turn up as well. And so we see the Bristlehog, very happy to see the champions transform. So if we have a Nidalee transform or one of the various ambush cards transform, the 1-cost card getting the bonus from the Siren Song, also getting the easy level up bonuses there. But the card that I'm really kind of interested in tying all of this stuff together is going to be Voice of the Risen. And so I have envisioned Nidalee and Evelynn both being exceptionally easy champions to flip. Evelynn is arguably the easiest champion to flip in the game, and then adding in Voice of the Risen to the mix, boosting all of the husks, the husk bonus getting distributed, and then the Voice of the Risen bonus being given out again. I feel like there's going to be a lot of nice and interesting synergies between the two kits, between the transform package with Nidalee and all of the summons that Evelynn gives you, and those cycles running around through there. Last but not least, the last thing I wanted to call out in terms of the Shurima package is Shurima is typically pretty garbage in terms of removal, right? So if we're playing Evelynn plus Shurima, we aren't expecting to have a fantastic removal package, but Hate Spike is always good. This has been one of the premier removal spells even through the Lands of Eternal. The new card in All-Terrain Trooper does give us a very interactable unit that delivers the vulnerables, and then the new card in Blimp Pack Poacher just gives you an outright removal spell. There are not too many units in the game that have a power greater than 6, and so he has a lot of opportunities to come in and capture the opposing units as well. And so it is kind of nice that we aren't just playing a purely stat-based package, that some of these interactive elements are coming out of the new set and really adding into the Shurima kit. And so very interesting package here, probably going to be the first deck we try out coming out the gates tomorrow. Up next, we have the Age of the Dragons deck. Very straightforward. You just put 3 Age of the Dragons and 3 Aurelion Soul in your deck and get right into battle. Am I right? And so I suspect Age of the Dragons is going to be one of those cards that might have to get nerfed. There are the various Ionia cards running around right now that potentially can counterspell this, between Deny of the olden days and then the new guy that just counterspells. And there's a few things now that the new Rite of Negation unit out of Shurima is another way to stop it, but this is just going to be an exceptionally powerful ability. Even if we aren't hitting Aurelion Souls, even if we just hit 3 dragons, that's probably going to be right around 30 stats that get put on the board. If we hit like Shyvana and a 5-drop and a Screeching Dragon or something, that's just a mountain of stats that this thing puts on the board. And if you do manage to spike an Aurelion Soul, it's going to be dropping just incredible heat very fast. And so what even happens if you hit 2 Aurelion Souls, right? You just get to AoE nuke your opponent's board for free while you've already dropped your giant dragon. It is very, very, very powerful with this, and it doesn't take a lot to add in to, say, the Shyvana Aurelion Soul deck. That's the place that we'll look to probably fit this in, is with Shyvana Aurelion Soul, although you don't necessarily have to, right? You could look to play more of a Feel the Rush style of deck with ramp in it and stuff, but then just topping out at Age of the Dragons. Very real possibilities there as well, but I would not be surprised to see this one tuned down to like 8 cards or 7 cards, as we saw with Troop of Elnix, because this just strikes me as being an exceptionally powerful ability. And so quite happy to slap on our Timmy pants and do the biggest and baddest thing that you can do in the game and use the Age of Dragons on the Aurelion Soul. Up next, after that, I'm very interested in the Poro King. It's like, I immediately see the Poro King and say, how do I get the daring Poro to work with this, right? That's, as soon as you see Poros and see a competitive landscape, you're just saying, okay, how do I level up the elusive? And I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case with the Poro King. I think he just has a real value package tied into him, and it's going to be kind of tough to figure out how to get him to work, right? Because it's going to be turn 5, you can activate him if he's going to be flipped, and then turn 6 if you want to get the spell and cast it otherwise, right? And so if you need to, well, I guess it would be turn 6 either way, it's to where if you're wanting to cast the Poro snacks the same turn that you play him, you have to play an additional Poro to follow up with. But the ideas and the kind of thoughts that I have with the Poro King is, if it reminds me back to the days of Expedition, as to whenever you are playing the Poro based decks, you were really like heavily focused in on the 1-drops, and then the key after that was getting a critical density of Poro snacks. And so you didn't really care so much about the non-Poro cards. You didn't really care if you found the Poro Explorer, whoever it is that draws cards. You didn't really care how many Fabled Poros you found to pass out the keywords. The big thing was just getting an absolute ton of 1-drops, mainly through the 1-cost guy that generates another one, and then getting 4 or 5 Poro snacks to put in your deck. And so with that kind of thing in mind, that's how I really envision these Poro decks being, is you're going to have like 25 1-drops in your deck, right? I don't think it's incredibly crazy to think that you aren't playing, say, like 6 separate Poros that would get you to 18, along with the spell that generates 3 more, and that being up to essentially 21 1-drops. But then the rest of the way, you have to have the ways to activate these, right? You have to have the ways to make them grow, and that's where the Poro King is going to come in. And so he's going to be your Poro Snacks generator that helps these things really pop off, but that's not enough to make a deck, right? That's not enough to really make everything happen. And so the kind of 2 pieces that I have to this puzzle are A, how frequently are we going to be able to cast Poro Snacks? And that's where I'm kind of tying in to Dragon Prince Grinzo, is we want to be in this spot to where we play a Poro, we play a Poro, we play a Poro. We've got 3 mana built off of that, and then we drop a Poro Snack. So we aren't really missing out on anything as the game progresses. And then he directly ties into the Swindler's Den. Like, this to me strikes me as the most probable and possible way to make the Swindler's Den actually work, is just using the Poro's package to just cycle through your deck until you can eventually find your Poro King. And then once you found your Poro King, you can use that to generate the snacks for the rest of the way. And so it just seems very realistic to me that you can have a deck that has, like, you know, those 20-some Poro generators, the 21 1-cost Poros, the Swindler's Den, the Prince, and the Poro King as another 9 cards, and then you just have a little bit of interactivity after that, along with 3 more Poro Snacks. And it just seems like if you have your deck super cheap like that and have your Poros regenerating the mana as they're being played, then the Swindler's Den lets you churn through until you can really pop off. And so I think it'll be very interesting in that sense. If that's not really possible, then we have seen the Aatrox Reaver's Row deck here in recent days, and I could definitely see something like that similarly working here, in the sense that if we're just playing all of these 1-drops, the Reaver's Row does come in and give those Poros a big gigantic boost, and so there's some potential there. But that's like the boring route, right? I'm really interested in this churn through your deck, Dragon Prince, Swindler's Den, Poro King kind of deck, and seeing what we can do with that. Up next, we have Neeko, and I think Neeko is quite interesting. Her level 2 ability is so incredibly powerful to where you give your sub-typed units everywhere the +1/+1, but the thing that you have to have with Neeko is you don't want to be playing a bunch of shitty cards just for the sake of having Neeko work, right? Neeko's origin lets you play the various zoo sub-typed units into your deck, but the kind of thing beyond that is it's nice to be able to have those cards not suck. And so that's what we kind of have across the bottom of the screen. These are all zoo-based units that aren't terrible. This is actually quite a nice value-based package with the Deck Hunter and the Grandfather Fae generating additional units, and the Crimson Pigeon just being a nice value play. But then also having access to things like Renekton that give you 2 keywords instead of 1. And then what I think is going to be the big deal in terms of any Neeko-based deck is going to be access to the Owlcats. And so we have a Bandle City-based package here is what we're running on the screen. And so the idea is Neeko's probable best flip in the set is going to be Grandfather Fae. And so if we're kind of having our original 3 copies of Grandfather Fae, Neeko being some additional Grandfather Faes along with Bandle Commando, generating the additional Owlcats, that's like a nice little package. Very big value generation set of generating units that don't suck. And so that's where I'm kind of like angling in with this Bandle City. It also gives you access to things like the Wandering Shepherd as a weapon master that's very strong to put the equipment onto your smaller units and really kind of get a bonus out of them that way. And so the kind of nice thing with this is if you do manage to get your Neeko to flip and you've done all of this work generating all of these additional units, it just makes them even stronger and stronger and stronger as you have to throw away some of your smaller ones throughout the earlier portions of the game. And so, nice to just slap a Renekton in the deck like this, right? Very interested, very excited to see how that kind of thing plays out. And last but not least, our final deck, actually 2 separate decks as we get to the very end, but both Demacia-based Garen-type styles. And as I've played over the past few days, if you caught our last Battles with Bust, we are playing the Garen Altar of Unity deck with Stony Suppressors. And so it was a Bard Garen deck with the Stony Suppressors. And it was just incredible to me the amount of power that you would get out of a single Stony Suppressor that was given +1/+1. And so when you move into seeing a card like Mageseeker Jr., which is a card that fits in the curve much more nicely. And so if you're going to play a turn 1 Bird, a turn 2 Esmith, and then turn 3 you're able to drop in Mageseeker Jr., he just kind of fits with what you're doing already. And then he doesn't really interrupt your curve in terms of challengers. So if you're wanting to play the Challenger Birds, or if you're wanting to play Petricite Broadwing, is Petricite Broadwing even still in Standard? I don't remember, but it's a very powerful package of just going like really dense in the units, and I think the Mageseeker Jr. is going to fit in there fantastically. And so I've had quite a bit of success with that in Eternal, and wanting to see if that kind of translates over into Standard, because I think the Mageseeker Jr. coming on board is a 4/4, and then just shutting down a large portion of your opponent's spells is going to be quite exciting. But if we look down at the bottom chain, this is what I'm kind of thinking of as a more classical style of elites that kind of play. Very interested to see how this goes. One of the cards I have a suspicion as being just one of the most powerful ones in the set is going to be Ingvar the Younger. That's the Freylord card down here in the middle. And if you think back to the times of playing elites, I mean, all of your units in the deck had the elite subtype except for maybe one, and then you would come in and just drop Vanguard Bannerman to give every unit on the board the +1/+1. Like, it's very easy to pull off that kind of thing with Ingvar, right? If all of our units in our deck are elites, maybe we have 1 or 2 units that aren't, but if you get to, say, pick a Vanguard Squire as your unit and then give that +1/+1 to 3 or 4 other units, that's a very nice cost for only 2 mana, even though Ingvar isn't going to be boosting herself. And so it's a nice and effective way to give multiple +1/+1s across the board. Things like Inspired Light, have been exceptionally powerful over the years. The game's barely out for years. Over the months, cards like Inspired Light have been quite powerful, and I think Ingvar can really fit in that spot. But then it's also so much nicer with her having this manifest ability attached to it, to where she comes down, she can manifest an elite. A lot of the expensive elites are exceptionally good if you get to manifest, say, a Cytherea, or I think like Jarvan, King Eldred the Rich, whatever the tough guy is. I think he's an elite as well, and so there's some very expensive choices that you can pick up with this that make it actually quite good early, mid-game, and late game. And so I'm very interested to see how Ingvar turns up. I want to see how she works out with spiders as we approach the Lands of Eternal. I think we're going to see lots of interesting decks from her, and I think pairing her off with the elites is something that's kind of interesting right out the gates. She also ties in quite nicely with the new card in Scrutinizing Sergeant, to where you get to summon a unit from the top of your deck. Maybe you're getting 2 elites off of the Sergeant instead of just 1 unit, and then having additional cards for Ingvar to come in and support on your summons. And so, very interesting stuff. Love coming out with the Demacias. Load me up a champion strength and let's pop off. That's what life's really all about out here. And so those are the decks I'm excited to try. You're definitely going to be seeing most of these, if not all of them, over the course of the next week. Hopefully you'll chime and check that out with us as we do our Battles with Bust series. And so, agree, disagree with the decks, see something that you missed, something that I missed, something that you liked that you hadn't thought about before, be sure to let us know, because that is going to do it for us today. And so I hope everyone enjoyed the video. Hope you maybe learned a thing or two along the way, and you had a good time watching. So this is Bust, and we thank you for being here.